scary stories.
This particular encounter still freaks me out. I know how horrible it could have ended, and I sometimes thank my crippling social anxiety as well as general common sense for preventing the worst. My freshman year of high school, when I was about 14, proved challenging socially. Afraid to really connect with strangers, I would typically eat lunch by myself or sit in the back of a classroom to avoid detection. I did have a few close friends from band, and I also grew fond of an equally awkward girl in my public speaking class. Now, because our public speaking teacher was also the drama teacher and cared much more about the musical than assigning us speeches, we never had to stand up in front of the class. Instead, I would walk into the room, sit down next to my friend, and talk to her for about an hour until the bell rang. After probably about 3 months, this class became a nightmare. I was walking through the halls one day in between classes when I was approached by a fellow freshman that I knew from band. She handed me a piece of paper and winked at me. "This is from Zach," she said. I believe that I stared at her rather blankly, earning me an eye roll. "The Zach that sits behind you in public speaking," she clarified, still confused, but not wanting to appear stupid. I smiled, nodded, and thanked her. I put the note in my backpack and resolved to read it when I returned home that evening. Once in the comfort of my bedroom, I retrieved the note after recalling a very tall and large senior named Zach, who did, in fact, sit behind me in that class. I did not remember ever speaking to him, but thinking it might have been a message from the teacher, I opened the lined paper up. As I skimmed through the words, I immediately became uncomfortable. Printed in sloppy handwriting with a cheesy love poem in it, he described all my physical features, mentioned my full name, and professed his undying love. Now I was very, very confused. I had never spoken to this kid. I only ever talked to the other freshmen in the class, and I had no account on any social media platform where he could have lifted the information. Even if I did know him, my mental issues would have definitely prevented any sort of long-term relationship. At this point, I was honestly a little more scared at the prospect of having to speak to someone I did not know than the actual poem, but I still began to skip that particular class after not attending public speaking for a good 2 weeks. I was eventually approached by a girl I knew from band, a fellow clarinet player by the name of Corey. "I heard you have been ditching," she said with a bit of a smirk. "Good girls don't ditch." When I just laughed and shrugged, she continued, "Well, your boyfriend thinks you are avoiding him. That Zach guy? He's definitely not my boyfriend. I have some classes with him too. I think he's a nice guy. You should give him a chance. He likes you a lot." Wanting to end the conversation, I just said that I would think about it and walked away. I think that Corey told Zach what I had said, and things escalated. I received a similar poem taped to my locker a few days later, and I began to see Zach standing outside of my classes as I left. Because he was blocking the door, I had no choice but to talk to him. I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember that he pulled out a large, black binder and handed it to me. He told me that he was a writer, and that all of the pages were filled with poems for me. After flipping through some very cringe-worthy writing, I believed that I thanked him, not wanting to hurt any feelings. He interpreted this as a go-ahead for a kiss, and I became pinned to the wall. When he finally came up for air, smiling like he had just won the ultimate prize, I told him that I was running late for my next class, and he released me. I felt assaulted and even freaked out, but I never told anyone about this. I never told anyone even when he began to wait for me by my brother's car. I never told anyone even when I saw Zach walking through my neighborhood staring at houses intently like he was trying to figure out which one was mine. I had to change all of the routes I took to get to my classes, and I would sneak out back doors just to avoid him. I guess I figured that the school year was almost over, and once he graduated, my problems would resolve themselves. However, about 1 month later, I was leaving the school with a couple of band friends. It was around midnight after a musical performance, and we were just going to grab a bite to eat at a village inn. As I made my way to my friend's car, I felt hands grasp me around my waist, spinning around in fright. I noticed Zach had me pinned against a different car. "I haven't seen you in a while," he said, "but that's okay. Love transcends time." I think I just smiled uncomfortably and said something about being busy with the musical. He ran a hand up my back and wrapped it around the back of my neck. "I know you're super busy," and that got me thinking. "I love you more than anything, and I know that we are young, and I know that I don't have a ring, but please run away with me. Please marry me." Completely stunned and paralyzed, one of my friends arrived. She overheard the conversation and picked up on how freaked out I was, and she swooped in. "Hey," she said, "we have to leave right now, sorry. My mom wants me home in like 5 minutes, and she will not be happy if I am late. Come on." She grabbed my arm and wiggled my body free from Zach. "Wait, so will you?" Zach asked as my friend dragged me away. I said something stupid about having to think about it, and I made it into my friend's car without any other problems. We laughed and joked about it later, but it scared me enough to take my cautiousness to the next level. For the rest of the school year, I made complex plans on how to travel between classes so I would not see him, and I made sure that I walked to and from any car with a group of people again. I never told anyone, even though an 18-year-old adult man proposing to and stalking a young girl was more than not okay. I wish I had, though, and I wish it ended there. A few years later, when I was about 21, I was scrolling through my Facebook page when all of a sudden, messages from people I had not talked to in years began flooding in. They all said something along the lines of, "Holy shit, this is creepy, oh my god, are you okay?" And they included links to a news article. Apparently Zach had been arrested for the possession of illegal pictures and for multiple counts of molestation against a minor. A couple of the girls mentioned in the article I even knew from high school. I was pretty decent friends with them too. Even though they were freshmen when I was a senior, I just hoped that he did not hurt them because they were friends of mine. He is in jail now for a very, very long time. However, if you search my name through Google, you will still find books that Zach actually published containing hundreds of poems that he dedicated to me. But I am honestly just glad that he is locked up and unable to hurt any more girls. So Zach, let's never, ever meet again. This story took place about 2.5 years ago. Me and my friends were hanging around high school at around 9 p.m. It was a group of 6 of us sitting around talking, smoking weed, and daring each other to do ridiculous things. 5 of us were all friends, but we had to tolerate this douchebag called Johnny. He was a mouthy, angry thug type, not the type of person normally I like to chill with, but I'm glad he was there this night. I was 17 at this time. Some of my friends were either 16 or 17, and Johnny was 15. Anyways, we were hanging out in the yard area of the benches, and behind us was a small forest area with bushes scattered around. It spanned about 30 meters throughout the night. We kept hearing noises come from this area, but we brushed it off as we assumed it was just an animal. The noises ranged from crunches of twigs to brushes rustling. After a while, the noises became too strange and drawn out to ignore, so we decided to investigate. Me and my best friend at the time walked towards the area, and as soon as we reached the fence leading to it, the noises stopped. I climbed on the fence and attempted to look around to see if anything was there, and after about 10 seconds, I decided that nothing was there. Alex turned around and proceeded to walk towards the rest of the group, and Johnny lightly jogged towards me. Him and I had a small back and forth whilst I was still on top of the fence, and all of a sudden the bushes rattled and something emerged. I leaped off the fence as if I had been shocked by 500 volts, and turned around to see Before us stood a balding man in his 40s wearing a dirty jacket and torn up jeans. Not the scariest image imaginable, but it certainly wasn't what we were expecting to see in the bushes on a Saturday night. For a good 10 seconds, everyone was silent. The man stayed still, but his eyes darted back and forth, settling on me and Johnny, and asked us, "What are you doing?" I am lost for words, but Johnny fires back with, "Mind your own business, you stupid cunt." The man licked his lips, smiled, and ran off in the area he entered from. This chilled us out, so we decided to all walk home in groups. I was getting picked up at Alex's house, so me and him left, as my dad was parked there. The rest of the group went off in the other direction. As we walked back, we saw the man sitting at a bus stop across the road watching us. He didn't chase or follow us, he just watched. Luckily, everyone made it back okay. So, whoever you are, balding man in his 40s wearing a dirty jacket and torn up jeans, let's not meet again. The story dates back to when I was in high school, so maybe 2000, 2001-ish. I didn't have my driver's license yet, so my parents would pick me up from school. On this particular day, it was my dad. Although my mom's work is only about a block away, it seemed like an ordinary enough day. My dad picked me up and drove through the parking lot to get to the main street to go home. I noticed there was this guy, just kind of standing around over by there. I did not think much of it at first. The school parking lot is adjacent to the football field, which gets used for a number of things besides football. There's also a public recycling area at the end of the parking lot too. He could have been there early for an event or meeting someone. He seemed, at first glance, to be more or less an average guy, until my dad said something. See, my dad was a psych nurse and worked at a local regional center. The types of patients he had typically had serious mental issues, and he recognized the guy as one of his former patients. He knew this guy, and this particular guy had a rap sheet involving several counts of physical and sexual violence. Telling me was probably a HIPAA violation, but he thought it more important that I be aware. My dad had done a little recycling while waiting for me to get out of school, and noticed his ex-patient there, and the guy wasn't just loitering, oh no. He was casing the apartment complex across the street, taking particular notice of the young women going in and out, and then watching the girls at my school as they headed for their cars in the parking lot just a little too closely. Goodness only knows what he was planning. Now, technically speaking, he wasn't breaking any laws at the time, but knowing what he did about this guy, my dad called the non-emergency police line and let them know what he had seen. He was told they would take care of it, and they thanked him for letting them know. I never saw any cops come by, so I have no idea what they did, if anything, or what happened to the guy. In any case, ex-patient of my dad's, let's not meet. In high school, I had a best male friend. It was a known fact that he was super into me, and people would give me shit all the time for leading him on. Never once did I try to become romantically involved with him. Was not into him like that, so he starts intensely dating my best friend. They have a frighteningly abusive relationship for years. He physically harms her. I hate him. Then we all move to the same city just by chance, and she admits to me that she found a folder on his computer that was just pictures of me, from Facebook I guess, just in a folder. Then I randomly see him at a show in Brooklyn where he met my then boyfriend. Then he starts contacting me. Had no idea how he got my number still, but he would only text me at 4 a.m. saying incoherent nonsense about how thick my butt was, and how he used to whack it to me in high school, and how I almost ruined his relationship with my best friend, and how I almost ruined his relationship with my best friend because of my body, and all sorts of gross and crude remarks. Then when I asked him to stop, he said he needed help because he had a drug problem, and he was going to kill himself if I didn't talk to him. This went on for a while. Not sure why I didn't block his number. I told him I would call the police, but I guess I was legitimately afraid he would hurt himself. Fast forward 2 years later, it's starting again. This time, I live on the other side of the country. Same texts at 4 a.m. This time, on the opposite coast. About my ass and how I defined his ideal woman. Gross, not flattering. Telling him to stop, will block and call the police. Begs me not to stop talking to him because he needs to talk to me. Legitimately afraid he's going to just show up on my street. My boyfriend is pissed and wants to get involved. I'm almost to the point of letting my boyfriend text him just to make him stop. Blocked him on Facebook, then I instantly get an Instagram request. Enough is enough. So high school sweetheart, let's not meet again. I had just moved to a new high school when I was a freshman in high school. I was a shy person. I didn't know anybody, and I wanted to make some friends. Any friends would do. A few weeks after the start of school, I was sitting outside at lunch when suddenly this guy, Jack, appeared next to me. I had a laptop with me, and he started asking me about it, and bragging about how his was better or something. He kept talking about laptops, which I thought was weird but ultimately harmless, and stupidly, I ended up giving him my number. From then on, every lunch, Jack would come and have an awkward conversation with me. One day I mentioned I liked video games, and he started going on and on about how many gamer girls he knew, and he wanted me to come to his house sometime so he could introduce us. After school, he'd text me about what kind of homework I had, and how he never did his homework. He called me girl a lot, and at the end of his texts, he'd end it with something like hugs you or kisses you. He bragged about the fact that he was a junior and therefore older than me. I was kinda creeped out by him, but I didn't do anything about it, which I regret. Eventually he did something creepy enough that I couldn't ignore. There was a high school dance coming up, and I was actually really excited about going. I mentioned the dance to Jack, and he started talking about how fucking stupid dances were, and that they were just a chance for popular people to hang out and kiss each other. So it was fair to assume that he wasn't going, right? I go to the school dance, and a few minutes in, he shows up dressed in a suit. I just started hiding in the crowd and avoiding him, which finally clued me into the fact that this wasn't really normal. At midnight, after the dance, he texted me and asked me if I was avoiding him. I told my sister about it, showed her the texts, and she was shocked. She told me I had to stop responding to the text and go to the school administrator. I didn't really want to go to the administrator and get him in trouble, but I did start ignoring him and started keeping a stalking log. Jack started blowing up my phone at odd hours in the morning, demanding to know why I wasn't answering his texts. During lunch, this was very obvious. He would slowly shuffle past the place where I was sitting, dragging his backpack behind him, hood up, staring at me the whole time. If I so much as glanced at him, he would dart over to me and tell me something like, "Hey, I texted you. Did you get it? You should answer your phone." I started changing where I sat at lunch, and that worked for a few days until he found out where I was, and then he'd do the same thing. I was taking a drink from a drinking fountain, the taller one of a pair. As I do this, I see out of the corner of my eye somebody very tall behind me to the lower drinking fountain. I looked up and Jack is staring at me uncomfortably close to my face. This went on for a month or so, and I was so paranoid I started looking behind me when I went home in case he was following me. My sister said I should pick an open place and just tell him to stop. If he continued after that, I'd have a stronger case to call it stalking when I told the school authorities. So after a few days, I did. He did a shuffling walk past me. I made eye contact. When he asked me about answering his phone, I told him to stop trying to talk to me. At first, he was pretty calm about it, and he asked me why. I didn't really know what to say in response, so I just kept telling him to stop. He kept asking, louder and louder, until finally, he called me a bitch and stomped off. I was relieved, but also especially paranoid in the days after that. I kept expecting him to do something crazy like show up at my house. But it seemed he got the message. All he did from that point on was glare at me. All he did from that point on was glare at me in the hallways. It's not the most dramatic story, but I found it very terrifying, and it has stuck with me ever since. If you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.